Member for North Island, Powell River.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm here today to speak about Bill C-14, the economic statement that the federal government presented to the House on November the 30th of last year. COVID has been hard on our communities in many ways. This time has been filled with constant change, significant modification in our habits, and real health concerns. When I speak with constituents across the riding, I am shocked by how many things that they've noticed have changed in their life. I appreciate the innovation that I've seen in our riding, people coming together to support one another and businesses stepping up to find new ways to practice what they do. Just last week, I participated in a grand opening event at a vineyard in my riding. It was a small event with strict distancing rules and careful protocols, but 40 Knots wanted to take an opportunity to showcase their newly closed-in outdoor space that will allow for events to happen all year round. The windows will be able to open in warm weather and close in the colder weather, but continues to allow for a beautiful view of their vines. I deeply respect 40 Knots for their sustainable model of making wine and the creativity they have shown, along with many local businesses in my riding during this time. This innovation is inspiring, yet many folks have struggled during this time because of the way our local economies are built. Across Canada, we need to see an increase in supports for regional economic development strategies. I'm carefully hopeful about the announcement that there will be a new regional economic branch in British Columbia. I do want the government to understand that I believe it is the rural and remote communities that have most need for supports during these economic changes. I hope to see an office, in fact, located in my region of North Island, Powell River. This is especially important for me because there are some significant challenges happening in my riding right now. On the 17th of December, the Fisheries Minister made an announcement about the Discovery Island fish farms. The announcement was based on a recommendation 19, of the Cohen Commission from 2012. I respect that part of the process included several First Nation communities in our riding. Those nations have a constitutional right to speak on behalf of the area they protect and represent and have represented since time immemorial. I understand that all 7 nations have notified their members that they are in support of the announcement. Indigenous communities have a right to stand for what they believe is best for their traditional territory, and as key partners in our region, it is important that during this time we work together to create solutions to move forward. Mr. Speaker, though, I do want to point out an important gap in this decision. Prior to this announcement, my colleague, our Shadow Minister for Fisheries, the member from Courtenay, Alberni, was very clear. The minister needed a plan to go hand in hand with this announcement. I want to be clear. It didn't need to be a step-by-step plan, but I wanted some sort of commitment that would allow for certainty during this time. I do understand that the Cohen Commission recommendation was made 8 years ago, that this was a timeline that many were watching. That does not mean the minister should not provide something. The lack of a plan has left a void in my region, especially in the more northern parts of Vancouver Island. During this time, we do not need more unknowns to face. COVID has certainly provided enough. What we do require is some certainty. I want to acknowledge how hard on communities, workers, and businesses this announcement has been. It is overwhelming, and I know many people are worried about the future of our region. When the Fisheries Minister made her announcement, there was no plan at all. I was hoping to see a commitment to significant resources and a regional approach. Mr. Speaker, I want to put on the record what I'm hearing from constituents in my riding. First of all, there needs to be a firm and strong commitment to wild Pacific salmon. Habitat restoration is an important part of this, but there are so many other factors, and people are asking for there to be a plan. The need to see the well-being of wild Pacific salmon in our riding has only increased as people have shown me rivers that are no longer seeing salmon return. Across our riding, the lack of on-the-ground fishery staff has also been a growing concern. Don't get me wrong, Mr. Speaker, there are some amazing DFO staff in our region. However, there are significant concerns that for a huge part of the coast that we represent, We simply do not have enough people on the ground to manage the need. Happily, the Indigenous Guardian program has been something that has been growing across the riding. There is a sense of trust from our communities, both Indigenous and non-Indigenous, that these folks fulfill the role as protectors of the natural resources in the region. Communities are looking for ways that this program will be able to grow and develop to do important work. Currently, there is a parallel process happening in our region to go alongside the decision made about the Discovery Islands. This process is the commitment that the federal government has made for a more sustainable aquaculture system. In my region, people are asking for clarity on what that will look like sooner rather than later. Businesses that are highly reliant on the fish farm industry are clear. The next steps need to be clearer for them so that they can make sure that their business plans are modified appropriately. With the closure of the Discovery Islands open net fish farms, businesses are looking for opportunities to invest to modify their businesses, and they're looking for the government to be part of that plan. There needs to be a clear path that is accessible, and the change that is happening so quickly, they need to see resources that are there to meet it. Investment in economic development in Indigenous communities has also been identified as a high priority. There is some amazing and innovative work happening in the over 20 First Nations I represent. There is a desire to have discussions about these projects and see how they can be built to provide economic opportunities in our area. Mr. Speaker, there are also several hatcheries in my riding, many of whom are working on volunteer basis. They have not seen an increase of funding to support them in well over 30 years and have found many creative solutions to fill in that gap. Many of them have reached out to my office and are wondering how their role will change due to this announcement. Of course, I've also heard from commercial fisheries and public fishing who are hoping to see action taken in the sustainable management of fisheries, and they want a voice to be a part of that. I've asked the minister to prioritize our region, to look at how to support us moving forward with a coordinated approach that recognizes the specific needs of our region. Again, a localized regional economic development plan simply makes the most sense. This requires a collaborative approach, and the federal government needs to be a significant player in this process. Mr. Speaker, I also want to point out that the municipalities in this part of the region will be impacted as well. There is need to have resources for them to create strategies that make sense for their communities. More attractive economic development means that we need to see better internet and cell reception in our region. The Connected Coast project in our area is one that we are very proud of. However, we need to see the resources now, not later. Our region demands it. The lack of cell reception is also a deterrent to inviting business opportunities, but also for safety as well. There have been multiple petitions from my region sharing this reality. All of this really fits into the reason I put forward my motion in the fall, Motion 53, Principles for a Sustainable and Equitable Future. This motion requires the government to equitably distribute funds and programming among federal ridings, takes into account UNDRIP, climate change, and the prioritization projects by small businesses that create diversity and local long-term well-paying jobs, because that's how we keep profits and benefits within the community. I also want to point out, Mr. Speaker, that the steelworkers who work in the processing plant in Port Hardy have reached out to my office, and they want to make sure their voices are heard during this process as well. We need to look at these principles to make sure that we follow a localized regional economic plan, and I urge the minister to review my motion and adopt these principles as soon as possible. Mr. Speaker, for our region to work together in a positive way, we need to see some clear commitment from this government. With a lack of clarity, it's hard for people to know what steps to take next. It is not good for our region, and I am concerned it will focus us on our differences rather than our joint commitment to this place that we all live. I also want to take this opportunity as I come to the end of my speech to acknowledge that women working in the fish farm industry have noticed an increase of sexual harassment during this time. on social media. I want to state clearly that this is simply not okay, and that we must all strive for a better country where women are treated with respect and not objectified by sexism. As I end my speech, I want to remind this government that it is local, rural, resource-based communities like the ones I represent who have built this country. I also want to point out that economic marginalization of Indigenous communities in this region and across Canada has been a huge barrier to our communities, and legislation has often been the barrier, so I hope to see this government do better.
Interrupt the honourable member there. We're out of